Okay, imagine um, British society 100 years ago, 50 years ago. There's a tension between those who are Jewish or half Jewish and those who are uh, Northern European, completely and unmixed with Jewish heritage, or they're blonde, or they're red hair, or they have light eye color, or light brown hair color and light eye color, blonde and red haired. They have freckles and a light complexion. So there's the tension between the Northern Europeans, and then there are those who are um, half Jewish, more or less, maybe a third Jewish. If you're looking at comparison between Mediterranean genetics and Northern European genetics, those who are half Jewish might look like Spanish or Northern Spanish, whatever. So Mediterraneans have a smoother complexion. They have a little fraction of African heritage, and their skin, well, their complexion doesn't, when they are out of the sun, if they have half Mediterranean complexion, their skin is not is white, is not as white, and they don't show as much of the capillaries under their skin, so their skin doesn't show as much pink. So they don't look like a red-faced Irish or red-faced Northern European, Scandinavian. Um, well, there's a little bit of tension between those who are one-third Jewish, like the royals and the aristocrats in London. They've been mixing with Arabs and Hindus and Spanish and Jewish and more or less Arabs, Hindus, Spanish, Jewish, Turks, Turkish, and even some Iranians. They've all been there in London, and they're changing gradually London to look a little more Mediterranean. And then there's tension between those who are white, as they're called, ethnically white Northern Europeans, with those who are obviously one-third Jewish. Some of them might look like they're half Jewish, but they're maybe just one-third Jewish. So there's tension. And then the whites say, why are we ruled by these Jewish people? They're partially Jewish. Why does it always have to be that the royals are always part Jewish? Well, they don't look very Jewish in Sweden, but the king of Belgium looks like he's half Turkish. And so why do they look? The Northern Europeans are saying, why do we look like? Why does it look like our royals are Jewish? Because these royals are of all Caucasian society. They're like an average of all Caucasian society, because all of Caucasian society is looking to European society. And so the British spent a lot of time in India, and the Hindis prefer to see a Jewish royal family in England rather than completely ethnically white Northern European family. So there's this tension, and then the Jewish, some of the Jewish arguments on history. Nazis killed us, made us into leather products and soaps, and creating some alienation. Or whites are guilty, especially whites are guilty of alleged slavery of Africans. There was no racial slavery of Africans. Nobody made Jews into soap. But these are things that jealous Jewish men say to put white men onto the margins of society, so that Jewish are closer to the average of Caucasian, and whites are sort of like not as close to the average of Caucasians. So anyway, so the royal, there's tension. So the royal family, they might like to have a white woman or man as their breeding partner, but they're facing a lot of alienation there. And so the idea is what? Oh, that the white Northern European women, well, see, the royal family doesn't want to look too white, because if they look too white, they are less popular among Hindis, Arabs, Turks, Spanish, Italians, so Latins, Turkish, Hindis, Arabs, all prefer to see more Jewish-looking royal families. So the royal family doesn't necessarily want to look more white. They started to want to look more white to appeal to white Americans, and that's why they have one of their women has a lighter complexion and a nose reduction surgery. Good-looking woman anyway. They're good-looking women anyway before they have the nose reduction surgery, but nevertheless. So they might want to, besides their official lineage of who's going to be the heir to the throne, they have both the men, the royal men, and the royal women. Both the royal women and the royal men have breeding partners on the side, just for their prestige. And so they don't necessarily want those breeding partners in their official royal lineage. So anyway, I had this fantasy of royal women choosing to select me for breeding with them. And then the fantasy is even stranger than you can imagine. I'm 50 years old, so this fantasy is about, they call her Queen Elizabeth, and imagine she's alive, and imagine she's not 100 years old, she's 90 years old, or let's say 87 years old, and she's, let's say, exaggerating her age. This is a crazy fantasy. So anyway, imagine that I was on steroids before the age of 10 so that I could produce live reproductive cells, and then she was right at the approaching the end of her, it's more likely that it would be her daughters, but it's just another fantasy. So then she chooses me to breed as her breeding partner, and then I get her pregnant. Okay, and she's 45 or 47 years old. She's 45 years old, and let's say she's only 90 years old now, and so that would make me like the father. The stepfather. I'm like the stepdad, hypothetically, of Emperor Charles, because let's say his mother, and she was exaggerating her age, and now she's only 89 or something, and 40. I wouldn't have been old enough 45 years ago to produce any live sperm cells. But let's say it's just a hypothetical. A little boy gets some steroids one season, and he produces live sperm cells. And I don't know when that would be possible. You'll see dogs can breed at the age of 2 years old, or 18 months. A dog can breed at maybe 18 months old. So maybe if the endocrine system of the child, of the boy, has been changed by a big dose of steroids to create like an early season where he can breed with a woman. A little boy can hypothetically breed with a woman. If you consider all these other mammal species that can breed at the age of 2. So let's say a boy is like 5 years old, and he gets some shots of steroids over the course of 3 months, and by the end of 90 days he can produce active reproductive cells, and he starts getting women pregnant when he's 5 years old. Imagine that's me, hypothetically. And then the royal women wanted to breed with me. Imagine that. Wouldn't that be a great fantasy? So not only women who are in their 70s or 60s, but women who are hypothetically now 90 years old. Let's suppose that they were 45 years old, and they could still get pregnant at the age of 45, and I could produce live using steroids to modify my endocrine system at the age of 5. Let's suppose I produced live reproductive cells, and I was 5 years old, and I got the Empress of the British Empire. I got her pregnant when she was 45 and I was 5, and she's only 90 now. This is the idea. And so then that makes me the stepdad of Emperor Charles. That's a funny idea. So anyway, he's a naughty boy. It's hypothetical, because it's more plausible that I would. Maybe she's got a daughter. got a daughter that you don't hear much about, Margaret, and another one named Mary, maybe. Margaret, uh, daughters of Queen Elizabeth. I don't know. I don't remember the names of these. Anne, Anne and Margaret. That's the idea. It's more likely I would have. So hypothetically, there were women, concerned women said that everybody's fagotizing this boy. The women have to lift him up, and so they have a concerned women of America start breeding with me, and I have like an early rutting season from producing, well, on steroids, producing sperm cells and active reproductive cells, and getting women pregnant, prominent women in society, for women who go to girls' schools and private schools, and I have this fantasy about Hillary Clinton and other powerful women, and also a great fantasy about Laura Bush. What if I was these were my wives? This is my fantasy. And then, but what if the big one, the big leader of powerful women, Queen Elizabeth, what if she was 45 years old, and hypothetically, if a 5-year-old boy could produce reproductive cells at the age of 5 from having his endocrine system modified by like 90